Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 311 of the FCPA Compliance Report. The FCPA Compliance Report is sponsored by Advanced Compliance Solutions, your one-stop shop for all compliance-related services. I also have a new service offering that helps companies selling into the compliance space develop their message for marketing, allows for sponsorship of my one-month podcast series, and then I train your sales team on how to market to a chief compliance officer. If you'd like more information, please give me a shout. Today I have with me Forrest Deegan. Forrest is the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer with Abercrombie Fitch, A&F, where he is responsible for corporate compliance programs, including ownership of relevant policies and oversight of internal compliance functions. We are here to talk about the second annual Third-Party Risk Management and Oversight Summit, which is being hosted next month, or rather this month, in New York City by Financial Research Associates and Compliance Week. It's going to be held March 20th and 21st at the Princeton Club. Forrest and I are both speaking at this event, and we're going to talk about the ROI you perform on your third-party program. Forrest has some really interesting thoughts and ideas, and indeed a third-party ROI program that he's implemented at A&F. He talks to us about that on the podcast, and we explore some of the other speakers and highlights of the upcoming conference.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure. Yes, so happy to be here.
So I was wondering if you might be able to tell the listeners really your professional journey to the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer role at Abercrombie Fitch and what your job duties entail now.
Sure. So I have been at Abercrombie, and we'll call it A&F for both of our sakes.
All right.
I've been at A&F for almost 5 years now, and my tenure here has been kind of a series of firsts. I was hired as the first Director of Compliance for A&F in 2012. Became the first senior director, and then about 2 years ago, became A&F's first Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer. Before coming to Abercrombie, I was at Big Law in Washington, D.C. for about 10 years, doing compliance work, counseling, other dispute resolution, investigation work. And
then you and I, as I indicated in my introduction, are going to share a panel or be on the same panel, and the panel is entitled Crunching the Numbers, How to Perform an ROI Analysis of Your Third-Party Program. And as I indicated, I really don't think this is a topic or subject matter that gets a lot or enough play in the compliance community. One of the reasons may be because of the difficulties that lawyers or others trained with a legal background might have in getting their hands around ROI. But I was wondering if you might be able to give the listeners just a taste of what you might be able to talk about on this topic.
Sure. I've been looking at third-party risk management, the entirety of my time here at A&F. And that stems from my private practice days where I had a lot of involvement with clients who needed support with respect to third-party risk. I think the numbers are out there with respect to the number of FCPA investigations or DNPs that involve third parties. It's something like 90+% of all of them involve people's third parties. So obviously, while every company is different, we all have third parties we engage with, and there's risk associated with it. And so, I think the key for a risk professional or compliance professional when looking at third-party risk management, we'll call it TPRM, and the key to kind of computing ROI really comes down to establishing that risk management as the front door to engagement. And what that means is, you need to be at the front of every vendor selection so that you can be there for contracting, as well as management, spend analytics, and re-engagement. And the idea with having a front door is that means that you have a standardized set of nomenclature you can use, standardized set of questions you ask at the beginning, and that reduces the number of internal hands that are going to look at things. So you drive internal efficiency when everybody's calling a spade, and you've ensured that InfoSec is looked at all of the potential InfoSec vendors at the front instead of at the back. So, driving efficiency is a big way. Another critical piece, and the reason why you want to be in on that vendor lifecycle process, is that if you serve as the front door for future engagement, that means that you are increasing the company's ability to manage spend and increasing the efficiency around spend analytics and deduplication of existing vendors. And so that's where your hard numbers come from, because at least in the retail industry, I've seen numbers, concrete numbers around the difference between procurement that's handled function by function versus procurement that's handled by a centralized, specialized procurement group, right? And so as increasing amounts of spend go underneath that procurement function, the spend reduces, and the number of vendors you're using for duplicative services reduces. And so if you tie TPRM at the front to, that back end reduction, that's where your savings is, and that's where it's most concrete. Now, less concrete, but equally valuable to me is also kind of that holistic concept, right, of ensuring the right risks are getting to the right people at your company, ensuring that risk is understood from a common perspective throughout the company, right, and that you're able to message kind of your expectations both internally and externally with respect to the program.
So one of the things that struck me about what you just said is it really follows what we saw the Department of Justice talk about a couple of weeks ago when they released their evaluation of corporate compliance programs, the latest DOJ guidance. And under third-party management, the headline topics are risk-based and integrated processes, appropriate controls, management of relationships, and real actions and consequences. And it really sounded like what you described really fit into what the Department of Justice is talking about. But one of the other things that I think companies like A&F have to consider is you have a wide range of potential risks on the vendor side. As you know, I come from the anti-corruption, anti-bribery side where we tend to focus on the sales side of things. But you have to look at, as you said, a much more holistic approach to third parties, management of those third parties, and a potential risk to A&F. So is there really any difference in your approach from the sales side to the vendor side?
Well, I think from that, in order to get at that holistic approach, right, you've got to determine what your risk priorities are as a company, right? There's not just getting the best price for the goods, but it's really about understanding what services are going to be performed on your behalf, right? Is the company going to have access to your PII or your trade secrets, right? Are they going to be customer facing for you if that's a relevant market for you? Are they going to be interpreting legal regulatory obligations? Are they going to be interacting with government officials? These questions transcend industry. The answers may affect different companies differently, right? We're not a bank, we're not an oil company, but once you understand, your risk profile, you can tweak your TPRM process to handle it accordingly.
Now, if I could ask, were there any other sessions that particularly intrigued you about the upcoming conference, or topics that you thought would be of particular interest or relevance to what you do at A&F?
Yeah, with respect to my specific work at A&F, day one's intriguing because it really kind of mirrors vendor lifecycle, right? Going from risk assessment to due diligence to contracting, onboarding, to audit, vendor management, and then termination. So, it's a very kind of practical, logical walkthrough, which I'm looking forward to, especially because we've got, in-house folks on every single panel. And so when you've got in-house folks, that means the advice is going to be practical. And because we have a spectrum of in-house folks from those banks and oil companies are referred to, but also your retail and consumer product companies, that means something that they say in there that's practical is going to be actionable for you. So looking forward to that kind of laser focus on day one. And also on day two, in addition to being on a panel with a compliance evangelist, I'm probably most looking forward to the cross departments, the best practices to work cross departments effectively to ensure a culture of compliance. That sentence and that topic basically, distills the majority of my work here at A&F as we build and enhance our corporate compliance program, right? There's a lot of cross-functional work that already occurs and that occurred before I got here, people doing a great job in their specific compliance function work. But how do you leverage that competency that is slightly different across the different areas to come up with that holistic picture on risk and compliance? And how do you work with folks and set expectations for folks who typically haven't worked with legal or with risk historically in order to say, look, this is part of everyone's job to protect the company. And by the way, it also is cost efficient, will save us money and make us look good.
So in the times I've been able to visit with you, and certainly in this podcast, it seems one theme that I am hearing from you is really how do you operationalize compliance? How do you do compliance in the business? How do you actually move compliance and have it burned into the fabric of the company? And that seems to be what the Department of Justice is telling us that we need to start thinking about. So I'm going to be really interested to see not only your discussion of that, but as you've articulated, there are going to be several other top-notch speakers from industry, government, law firms, and a compliance evangelist who are going to talk about those things. So my hope is that we have a wide range of attendees so that we can have those informal discussions over our breaks and lunches where I tend to learn about as much as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. When I saw the roster of participants, I was excited to join. And as you say, a lot of those breaks can be just as informative as the panel. So looking forward to kind of being with an audience that'll clearly care about third-party risk and that clearly wants that actionable advice. It's funny, I was in a meeting with my compliance team, I think near the end of last week, came out of that talking about, updates to our system and saw the updated DOJ guidance. And so when I sat around our meeting notes, I included a copy of that. And, so much of what I'd already said was in that. It really does talk about, I think you say, burning it in. I think I say weaving it in to the tapestry, right? Making it part of, the actual day-to-day process. Because if it's not how you actually do the work, right? If it's not how you pay the bill or sign up the vendor or, move the merchandise, then there's going to be a way around it.
So I've been talking with Forrest Deegan. Forrest is a participant in the upcoming Third-Party Risk Management and Oversight Summit put on by the Financial Research Associates and Compliance Week, March 20 and 21 in New York City. I'm going to link to the registration and information site, and also listeners of this podcast can receive a discount to the conference. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. But Forrest, I wanted to end by asking if someone wanted to contact you about your work or your upcoming presentation, could they do so? And if so, how would they do that?
Sure. No, I'd be happy to, follow up with anybody who's got questions related to the upcoming work. And best way to reach me is probably at Forrest, Forrest, Deegan, Deegan, at anfcorp.com.
Well, Forrest, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today, and I look forward to catching up with you at the conference.
Great. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to it.
This is Tom Fox again. If you have any questions or would like to put to me a question for a mailbag episode, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I have a special offer for listeners to this podcast. You can receive a discount of 15% to this conference, the second annual Third-Party Risk Management and Oversight Summit, by entering code CMP Charlie Michael Peter 161 when you register. I hope you will join me at this conference. I am speaking together with Forrest on a panel, and I think it's going to be very interesting for a lot of different attendees and those who are speaking. Finally, if you've listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would ask if you could rate us, as it would greatly help our rankings and getting out the word about the FCPA Compliance Report. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to this episode.